It is impossible for inhabitants of different worlds to walk or sit or stand on the same floor, because they have differing conceptions of what is horizontal and what is vertical. Yet they may well share and use the same staircase. On the top staircase, illustrated here, two people are moving side by side and in the same direction, and yet one is going downstairs and the other upstairs. Contact between them is out of the question because they live in different worlds, and therefore can have no knowledge of each other's existence. Welcome to EOS Weekly. We've got a great episode for you today where we're going to focus on the strange world of interblockchain communication. And we'll show you the similarities with IBC and the multi-dimensional worlds that Escher created in some of his drawings. But before we dive into IBC, let's take a quick look at the current state of the EOS ecosystem. Last week, WORBLI did launch, making it officially the second public EOS blockchain to go live. But the other EOS blockchain that's sort of come out of nowhere is WAX. We haven't spoken much about WAX yet, but in the last week, WAX passed up the EOS mainnet on Blocktivity as the most used blockchain in the world. I believe since then, the EOS mainnet has come back into the #1 spot, but they're kind of going back and forth here. WAX stands for Worldwide Asset Exchange, and it is geared towards the exchange of digital assets. So mainly right now for the gaming industry is what it looks like, and I believe that's the background of these founders is also from something called Opskins, which is from the gaming industry. So this does use EOS software, EOS.io software, but it's a private implementation similar to Ono, or what will be coming soon with EOS Finex. In other words, you wouldn't be able to launch your own dApp on top of WAX, at least not yet. WAX wrote up this blog post last week where they described why they chose EOS to be the backbone of their platform. It's really a great vote of confidence for EOS. And the fact that it's already in the #1 spot is truly remarkable. So the other big news that happened on November 5th was the launch of BancorX. This enables you to exchange dApp tokens across the EOS mainnet and Ethereum. In this first release of BancorX, you can trade dApp tokens with one another. For example, if you wanted to pay with Karma tokens and receive IQ tokens, BancorX supports that. It also enables you to transfer the Bancor Network token, that's the BNT token, back and forth between EOS and Ethereum. What this means is if you wanted to exchange dApp tokens across EOS and Ethereum, you could do this pretty easily by first converting to BNT and then trading the BNT for the tokens on the other blockchain. We reached out to Bancor to see if they had plans to add this cross-chain liquidity to WORBLI and Telos, but Bancor said they are in fact planning to expand to new chains, but that they weren't ready to comment yet as to which chains those were. And speaking of Telos, they have not yet gone live, but here's the current state of the Telos launch checklist. They're getting closer and meeting weekly for the go, no-go calls. The next call is on November 20th. And the other events that we're keeping an eye on that should be coming in the weeks ahead are the referendum voting process, REX, and the EOS Finex exchange. So November is going to be another exciting month, not to mention the hackathon in San Francisco that's happening next week. But going back to BancorX, this is a big deal. Along with the WORBLI launch, this is the biggest news of this past week. The ability to transfer value across blockchains is crucial to the overall success of these chains. You can think of it as chess players who are covering one another. The connection that BancorX just made between the EOS mainnet and Ethereum strengthens the position of both players on the board. And this BancorX solution is a great example to use as we explore this interblockchain communication thing, what it is and what it isn't. So the question we need to ask ourselves is this: is BancorX, with this ability to transfer BNT tokens back and forth between EOS and Ethereum, is this a form of interblockchain communication? There's not necessarily a right answer to this question. It seems everyone has a different definition as to what IBC is and what it isn't. And IBC is so new that there's not even a Wikipedia page on this topic yet. So that's a sign that we're sort of in uncharted territory here. The difference of opinion as to what IBC is and what it isn't seems to be in where the solution resides. So if you think in terms of layers, where down here is the internet, and on top of the internet we have these three layers: the ledger layer, the transaction layer, and the identity layer. Blockchains ride on top of the internet, providing these three layers where they didn't exist before. All blockchains occupy this same realm, these same three layers, regardless of how advanced they are or whether they are a straight-up cryptocurrency or if they're more of a third-generation smart contract type of blockchain. The third-gen blockchains just offer more functionality and greater scalability, but the layers they occupy are the same. Now, above these layers is the application layer. The dApps, the decentralized applications, reside in the application layer. They facilitate the authentication of users through the identity layer, enabling them to make transactions, which in turn causes changes in the ledger. Now, back to our question as to whether BancorX is IBC or not. We need to understand that BancorX resides up here in the application layer. So, does BancorX count as IBC if it is up here in the application layer? Or is it only IBC if the connection between the chains resides down here, where it is more of a direct connection from one blockchain to another? If you go with the more loose definition and include applications like BancorX in IBC, it can be a bit of a slippery slope. For example, what about Changelly? Changelly lets you convert EOS to Ethereum. So does that make Changelly a form of IBC as well? This would be a bit of a stretch. But for the sake of clarity in our videos, whenever it matters, we'll refer to IBC as base protocol IBC to mean a direct blockchain to blockchain line of communication down here. And we'll call it app layer IBC to refer to things like BancorX in the app layer up here. There, now that we've gotten the terminology out of the way, let's clarify what IBC is further by looking at some real-world use cases for it. When you start thinking through why we would want and need IBC, what you'll find is that there are different use cases depending on what type of token we're talking about. So let's break down tokens into some categories. Tokens can be divided into fungible and non-fungible. Most are fungible, like the dollar bill. It doesn't matter which dollar bill you hold because they all represent the same amount of value. They're interchangeable. Non-fungible tokens would be more like the deed to your house. There's only one of them and it's unique. And of course, the most famous non-fungible crypto token is, of course, the CryptoKitty. Of the fungible tokens, you can subdivide these into utility tokens and currencies. Utility tokens give you access to certain rights or certain resources in a crypto ecosystem of some kind. And utility tokens can be further divided into base tokens and dApp tokens. Base tokens, or sometimes called system tokens, are like the EOS token, the Ethereum token, Telos, WORBLI, Neo, Tron. These tokens give you access to resources on the respective blockchain. And then dApp tokens are like the IQ token for Everipedia, or the BAT, the BAT token, Basic Attention Token, on Ethereum. We're all familiar with these dApp tokens and how they give you access to some sort of functionality or resources specific to the dApp, depending on the tokenomics of that dApp. So those four on the right, base, dApp, currency, and non-fungible, are the main categories of tokens that we want to cover in this IBC discussion. First, the base tokens. When Dan Larimer wrote about IBC in his Dawn 4.0 blog post that he published back in May, this base token IBC is what he was talking about. Using the base EOS token to coordinate resource allocation across chains, across side chains. In this context, IBC is what would make sidechains possible. Here he says how the same set of block producers would operate many different chains, with elections happening on the main chain. And he refers to IBC as validating a message. It's important to note that he's talking about messages moving between two chains, not tokens. This is because the EOS token itself never moves off the main chain. It's only messages that get passed back and forth, hence inter-blockchain communication, not inter-blockchain token transfers. This is an important nuance to understand, so let's pause and clarify this before moving on. You see, you never really transfer an actual token from one chain to another. You can only transmit information about tokens. It's sort of like in the Terminator when the time traveler always arrives naked. When you go from blockchain to blockchain, you can't really take anything with you, just like the time traveler. In some cases, you can recreate on the destination blockchain and burn what was left behind, which mimics a cross-chain transfer, but this will always be an illusion. Each chain is as if in its own dimension, and while us humans can interact with and move between chains, you can never truly move things like tokens between them. This is why we open with that Escher quote, "It is impossible for inhabitants of different worlds to walk or sit or stand on the same floor, yet they may well share and use the same staircase." The Bytemaster understands this, which is why he never mentions the actual transfer of tokens from one chain to another in that Dawn 4.0 write-up. He only says messages. But those messages might be all you need if you want to go with the create and burn type of solution. Okay, let's return now to base token IBC, which is needed in order to create sidechains. So if you get confused about sidechains versus sister chains, think of it this way. Sidechains would be the same set of elected block producers on a given chain, spinning up a second or a third instance of their blockchain for the purpose of horizontal scaling. It would be like if right now there was one plot of land and your EOS mainnet tokens gave you access to a portion of that land for you to farm on. And then imagine a second or a third plot of land came into existence. Without increasing the total token count, there was just a larger amount of land available. This is what sidechains are all about. With the increased land supply, your tokens would have more purchasing power. Now, this doesn't mean the total or the token price would instantly double or triple as the land supply doubles or triples. Speculators may have already priced in the additional plots of land, and the utility of the token might just be catching up to the speculator's pricing. But what we do know, without a doubt, is that adding these sidechains will bring more utility per token. The full token supply will be shared among these sidechains, spread out among the plots of land. So even though sidechains might cause some upward pressure on the token price, the purchasing power of each token will have increased. Sidechains are basically a way for an existing chain like the mainnet to power up, like going from a rook to a queen in a game of chess. The mainnet has some competition coming with Telos and WORBLI, where dApp builders will have less expensive and more specialized blockchains to choose from. The mainnet is going to need IBC, enabling it to spin up sidechains so that it can stay competitive price-wise with these newer chains. Of course, Telos and WORBLI will be doing the same thing. They'll be adding their own sidechains to power up themselves. But powering up with sidechains does put more of a burden on the block producers of that chain, because sidechains require additional hardware and infrastructure. So the token price will need to reach a certain level, especially on these newer chains, before those block producers will be able to justify to afford to power up with their own sidechains. Anyway, that's the first use case for IBC for base tokens. Block One is working on this type of IBC, but it's not ready just yet. But when it does become ready, you can rest assured that the EOS mainnet and potentially others will start spinning up sidechains soon after. Sidechains are the only use case we know of for base token IBC. If you know of any others, please let us know by adding a comment below. Now let's move on to dApp tokens. Why would you want to move dApp tokens, like the IQ token for Everpedia? Why would you want to move this from one chain to another? This is a weird one. You can only use these tokens when they're on the native blockchain, and keep in mind that you can never actually transport one of these tokens across chains. The best we can do is fake it by making a copy and burning, or escrowing those tokens on the source chain. But it would be very strange to move an IQ token from the mainnet to Telos when the Everpedia app is running on the mainnet. What would possibly be the point of this? There are two use cases we can think of for transferring dApp tokens across chains like this. The first is application porting. The EOS 21 protocol that shEOS is creating is a great example of this. They're trying with this protocol to make it super easy for Ethereum dApps to port over to EOS. If you're running a dApp on Ethereum and you see the light and decide it's time to migrate over to EOS, one of the challenges you'll face in transitioning over to EOS is getting all your dApp tokens which are currently sitting on Ethereum, transferred over to EOS. EOS 21 enables the dApp to keep the total number of tokens in their token supply constant and shift over to EOS in a secure way. In a way, for example, that does not allow holders to double claim their tokens. So, app porting to new chains is the first use case for dApp token IBC. A second use case would be partner dApps that reside on two different chains. For example, imagine Southwest Airlines has a frequent flyers dApp running on Telos, and Hilton Hotels has a similar rewards program on the EOS mainnet. If these two formed a partnership, there might be a use case for making Southwest tokens and Hilton tokens interchangeable with each other across chains. These were the two main use cases that we were able to come up with for dApp token IBC. Again, if you can think of any others, please add a comment below. Currencies have the most obvious use case of all these. If you're building a dApp on one of these chains, it would be nice if you could easily accept Bitcoin, Litecoin, Monero, or the crypto peso that EOS Venezuela is creating. You should easily be able to accept any of these as payment. And it would be nice if these currency tokens could flow across the chains, especially if they could flow across down here at the base protocol layer without involving an application to coordinate the movement. But again, we need to remind ourselves that the real token can never truly exist outside its native blockchain. That's true for all tokens. The best we can do is fake it by doing something like escrowing the token on the native chain and creating a replica on the destination chain with its price pegged so that the replica token represents the same value as the true native token. Interblockchain.io is working on this type of solution. On their website here, they say coins trapped in their blockchain network silos can be moved to multi-ledger blockchains such as Ethereum, Neo, EOS, Stellar, Lisk, Quantum, etc. They call the replica token a proxy token, like you might have a proxy Bitcoin reside on the EOS mainnet, which can be redeemed for real Bitcoin at any time. Another company that is working on this is the Cosmos network, which actually was one of the earlier players in this IBC realm, it looks like. Cosmos Network describe themselves as the Internet of Blockchains. They have this thing called the Cosmos Hub, which apparently is itself a blockchain, but its main purpose appears to be related to IBC. They have these tokens called atoms that are native to the Cosmos Hub, but then they also have something called photons, which sound very similar to BankorX's BNT token, where these photons provide the liquidity across multiple Cosmos Hub blockchains. So we could summarize the use case for IBC in the currency category by calling this proxy transfers or value transfers, using that same proxy term from interblockchain.io. And that brings us to our last category of tokens, the non-fungible token. So if you think of all the real-world assets, especially assets that are unique, that are non-fungible, that are not exchangeable, if you think of all those assets that in the months and years ahead will be converted to digital assets stored on the blockchain, things like your driver's license or your ID card, your passport, plane tickets, the deed to your house, and then of course the digital assets for the gaming industry, like what's being traded on Wax, and of course the infamous CryptoKitty. Looking at the spectrum of use cases for non-fungible tokens, there's all sorts of reasons why you would want to be able to move these things across blockchains. For example, you might purchase a unique gaming asset on Wax to be used in a game on the mainnet. This last July, 0xCert and Wanchain announced a strategic partnership to drive the adoption of non-fungible tokens, specifically to enable the cross-chain exchange of non-fungible assets. Here it says the strategic alliance was built around the idea of fostering an ecosystem in which developers would not be limited by one single blockchain, but could utilize cross-chain functionality. The number of use cases for transferring non-fungible tokens across chains is hard to summarize in a single statement. There's so many of them, we're going to cheat a little and put an infinity sign down here to represent this. That's it for this week's episode. Please like and subscribe if you found this content informative. And if you want to continue to stay current on EOS as this revolution unfolds, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks, and we'll see you next week right here on EOS Weekly.